Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya. Om Namo Bhagavate Vasudevaya.
Live from Super Soul Farm, this is Wisdom of the Sages, a daily yoga podcast with your host Raghunath and co-host and senior educator at the Bhakti Center in New York City, Kaustubha Das. Welcome to the show. Welcome to the study of the Srimad Bhagavatam. That's your yoga. That's your yoga you're going to get today. But it's a daily yoga podcast, but it's really yoga philosophy, which really directs everything in our life. It's sort of like the GPS moving us around. If we can take the time and just hear it, try to imbibe it, try to put it to practice. We call it hear it. Wait, what do we call it? What do we call it? Learn it, live it, give it. What do you think about that?
Live it, give it. Okay.
Learn it, live it, give it. Because first you got to learn it. And then when you learn it, you get inspired to sort of live it. And then you don't even have to try to give it. When you're living it, you just naturally give it away. And this is how this has become quite epidemic, viral, so to speak. It's viral right now. And we're having a big weekend this weekend at the farm. Kaustubha is going to come up here. We have our teacher training. Bobby Marchand, who was our Walk on Wednesday wonder yesterday. What a lady, huh?
Yeah.
What a lady. And Mara's cooking. Sort of like a
Oh,
little.
okay. Now we're talking. I was hearing about that vegan meatball sub. Can I be expecting that when I get up there?
Subs. We're all excited. And so we're here with Jeff and Josh live. They're building the outdoor yoga deck. It's quite exciting.
Look at you sipping from your goblet over here.
My goblet.
You got your fancy shirt on today.
Let them build the yoga deck. I'll drink my goblet. Sparkly water. I got a little headache, some fidgeting around.
Okay, right.
Right.
It's going to be okay. Once we dive into this Bhagavatam, you're going to feel relieved of all forms of suffering.
Oh, that's right. That's right. The Bhagavatam does promise that.
Let's put it to the test.
Let's put it to the test. Okay. So we are, and we got Mike D from the Beastie Boys coming on. So what do you think of that?
Well, I want to be, I want to be careful that we also have Eddie Stern too, because Eddie's like incredible too. Everybody knows Mike D. Everybody's very excited about Mike D. No question. But
Stern, we love Eddie Stern. But come on, we got Mike D.
Anyway, it should be fun, I think. So I'm really looking forward to that one.
All right.
And we should note that.
Can I ask any question I want, or does it have to be on the Bhagavatam?
But we should note that that's going to be at 12 p.m.
Oh, yes.
on Sunday Eastern time. So it's 3 hours later than it normally is because Mike's on the West Coast, so it makes it easier.
Yeah.
So special time next Sunday.
This Sunday coming up. And we're still doing questions and answers day, Saturday.
Yeah.
So if you have your questions, please send them into Mara. Wisdom of the Sages 108@gmail.com.
We missed it last week too, so we got a lot of questions to answer.
People are just like confused walking around the streets like zombies. What do I do? My question wasn't answered. All right, let's dive into this before I just run with this. All right. Let's start with our mantras, our invocations. Narayanam namaskritya naram chaiva narottamam devim saraswatim vyasam tato jayam mudiraye. Before reciting the Srimad Bhagavatam, which is the very means of conquest, one should offer respectful obeisances to the personality of Godhead Narayan. Unto Narayan Rishi, the supermost human being, unto Mother Saraswati, the goddess of learning, and to Srila Vyasadeva, the author. Nasta Prayesh Vabhadreshu Nityam Bhagavat Sevaya Bhagavati Uttama Shloke Bhaktir Bhavati Naishtiki by regular attendance in classes in the Bhagavatam, and by rendering service to the pure devotee, all that is troublesome to the heart is almost completely destroyed. In loving service to the personality of Godhead, whose praise with transcendental songs is established as an irrevocable fact. Om Jnana Tamarandasya Gyananjana Sulakaya Chaksurun Milatam Yena Tasmai Shri Gurave Namaha. Welcome to Bhakti Yoga, and this is the book, Srimad Bhagavatam. And once you get this taste, nothing will be the same. Okay, so we're on Canto 1. We're in Canto 1, Chapter 16, Text 20. And there's a conversation going on, Kaustubha. You want to share it?
It's a conversation that's being witnessed with mystic vision.
Mm-hmm.
And it's a conversation between the Dharma personified in the form of a bull, and the earth personified in the form of a cow. And the earth is crying. And so Dharma is asking, why are you crying? But all of this is playing into this larger theme that's going to play out in this chapter and the next chapter about the age of Kali is setting in. The age of quarrel and hypocrisy is setting in. And the earth is suffering under seeing that these symptoms are arising. And so we're going to hear about those symptoms as well. So
this is sort of like the change of the seasons. You know, that first, it's summertime, you see the leaves, the first trees start to change. But now it's going from autumn to winter.
Dark, cold winter.
Dark, cold winter. It's sort of like the trees have no leaves. The sun has not shined in the last 4 days. And it's getting extremely cold today. That's what's going on. It's Kali Yuga's setting in, and it's quite shocking. It's quite shocking. It's quite shocking how so many of these facets or descriptions rather are like so real and in our face right now. Matter of fact, it almost seems like Kali Yuga's kicked into extra high gear
2020
since we were kids. Yeah, no, in 2020, I know.
Yeah, it does. And also what's going on here is that the bull, one sad part of this vision that Maharaj Parikshit is having with his divine eyes is that he's seeing that the bull is standing on only one leg. And as we read on, we're gonna hear that he's been being beaten by the personification of the age of Kali. But we're gonna hear that he's standing on only one leg, and maybe today we can discuss. In the next chapter is going to go into a lot more depth on that. But maybe we can discuss those 4 legs of Dharma and how only one is left and that kind of thing too.
Okay, that's good. That's good.
Yeah.
That's a good place.
Okay, so why don't you start with text number 20 then?
Text 20. I'm just going to read. Tell me to stop if you like.
Okay.
I have lost my...
Okay, start again.
I have lost my 3 legs, and I'm now standing on only one. Are you lamenting for my state of existence, or are you in great anxiety? Because henceforward, the unlawful meat-eaters will exploit you. Or are you in a sorry plight, because the demigods are now bereft of their share of the sacrificial offerings, because no sacrifices are being performed at present? Or are you grieving for living beings because of their sufferings due to famine and drought?
Yes.
We have a disconnect with higher beings. Should we get into this now? Or should we just read a little more?
No, well, how can we stop there? We have a disconnect from higher living beings. Okay.
We have and there was a purpose of having wisdom leaders.
Yeah.
They're not just thinking about things of this world, and they're thinking about connections with the celestials.
Yeah.
This has been going on all over the world. And then they're saying at the beginning of Kali, and you hear remnants of it. You hear about communion with higher beings and relationships, and then it just, the whole thing is just looked back as myth. These are just all mythological things. These cultures never communicate with higher beings. We say yes, but there's been a disconnect. And we it's almost like it's all about me and my issues. We've always been connected. According to the narrative, we've been connected to all the higher planets, all the higher beings. And at one point, there became sort of a self-absorption in I'm completely autonomous. I'm not reliable on anyone. I'm a self-made man. I've created this, and I've created this garden. You see this cucumber? I created it. You didn't create anything. We're just sort of manipulating all the gifts that we have. We're like secondhand gods, manipulating all the gifts and claiming ownership over them.
Now you're
Fighting
quoting
over
the
land.
Shelter lyrics right there, right?
They are. They're shelter lyrics. It's all shelter lyric. Secondhand gods. That's all we are. Not creating, manipulating, and leaving the scars. Robbing from the earth, stealing from the trees. Not out of need, but greed and false prestige. But it's all yours. What can I own? Not family, property. It's all on loan. But our miserly minds of I, me, and mine fight in war for what's not ours. And here's my plea for Sharanagati.
You plan on bringing that out when Mike D is on the show? Is that what you're doing?
I think he'd like it. Mara wasn't hardcore. She's like, wow.
Yeah.
Mara was a civilian. She missed the hardcore scene. She was probably like 11.
Yeah. It's such a valid and important point that you're bringing up, and we're seeing here that so dharma is turning to the earth. The earth is crying and suffering. Dharma is bringing up what are the reasons for this, and then let's look at these possibilities so far. He's going to go deeper into it. The following verses are going to go further. So, are you lamenting because of my state of existence? Is the earth lamenting because dharma is barely standing anymore? Right. In the age that we live in, dharma is barely standing anymore. Is that why you're suffering? Is that why the earth is suffering? Or are you in great anxiety because henceforth the unlawful meat eaters will exploit you? Right. And this metaphor is kind of like it's getting literal and figurative. It's working on both levels, right? Because the idea is that in a civilized civilization, in real civilization.
A civilized civilization.
Okay, I correct.
Are they civil?
But in a real civilization, there's concern beyond just the selfish, whimsical desires. There's concern beyond just mere exploitation. And so we move around the earth trying to exploit it. We're sucking the oil out of the earth, right? Not thinking, where does this lead to? Does it affect the earth? How much can we pull out? When are we going to start fighting over all of this? It's like we create needs that we need petroleum fuel, for this need that we really didn't need. Like we need an automobile. Do we really? Yeah, we do. It'll make life better. Okay, now we're going to need this petroleum fuel. What's it going to do to the earth? In terms of polluting the air, in terms of even the earth itself, we just think on the level of exploitation. We don't think very deeply.
We think on the level of short-term cost. Well, the cost is we're just going to have to cut open into this mountain. We're going to extract the steel. Okay, there's a cost with that. Yeah. We're never thinking about the long-term cost.
Right. If we're like little
workers,
don't have
miners.
Yeah. And so anyway, so much can be said about that. So but also that manifests in meat eating. Right now we create these factory farms where it's just unspeakable cruelty going on in this world on just this huge, massive, incredibly huge level that we hide away, we turn our backs to, because we just haven't been thoughtful enough to really consider it very deeply. So when Dharma says to the earth, are you in great anxiety because henceforth the unlawful meat eaters will exploit you? I think that encompasses both the literal as well as the figurative, that we're just interested in exploitation without any thoughtfulness, without any care, without any sensitivity. Then he says, are you Or are you sorry, or are you in a sorry plight because the demigods, and now you're talking about higher beings comes into play, right? Because the demigods are now bereft of their share of sacrificial offerings because no sacrifices are being performed at present. We just think, yeah, the cucumber is mine, right? You know, this is mine, that's mine, everything's mine. I got it myself. No, no, no. You know, again, in civilization, people have a depth of thought, you know, a depth of gratitude, a depth of some depth of humility, where they
It's hard to
recognize.
be an atheistic gardener, by the way.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That's the idea. When you're living in tune with the earth, then a lot of this should be intuitive, right? I can't create a cucumber, but somehow mystically, the previous cucumber had this little seed in it. And by placing that in the earth, all the minerals and the nutrients, the flavors, the aromas, it's all there in the earth. The earth is providing this. And then when someone says there must be a person there, then people that are out of touch with the earth say, oh, you see, now you're going into your mythology. But the people that are really in touch with the earth, that are deep, they realize there has to be a person that's provided. Just like my mother provided for me milk, right? Just as the cow provides milk, just, you know, just the earth is providing the food that we eat. You know, and there's got to be someone behind the sun. There's got to be someone behind the mountain, behind the river, but, you know, all of that. And so now Dharma is saying to the earth, are you in a sorry plight? Because the demigods, those higher beings, right, are now bereft of their share of sacrificial offerings. Nobody's showing their gratitude. Nobody's thoughtful anymore. Everybody's becoming selfish, and there's no gratitude left anymore.
No appreciation. Another Shelter song.
No appreciation.
We're just going to go through all the Shelter lyrics today. Hey, Mary, you want to hear an interesting side note, Mary? Kaustubha and me's generation, Lori Pag, Nancy Rothman, Jeff,
Jiva.
Our parents, our mothers were never encouraged to breastfeed. They said it was unhealthy.
Really?
The doctor said. So we got.
So if we're psychologically messed up.
That's why.
I think I could have been taller. Truthfully.
I could have been taller. So, okay. So Dharma says to her, is it because, are you suffering because the sacrifices? So let's try to frame this right? Like when we hear that terminology, sacrifices aren't being performed anymore. Don't go to some weird place.
The sacrifice thing it's just a weird word for an American to hear, because we go right to some like Santeria movie where we're taking a chicken, cutting his head off.
Right.
Not that.
So is gratitude being shown and expressed for all that's being provided for us.
Sure.
And then tied to that, connected with that, is the next possibility of the earth suffering. Or are you grieving for living beings because of their sufferings due to famine and drought? And what these texts will say is that when the way that the world works is it's designed to bring out for you to recognize the need to express your gratitude, to express your appreciation, and ultimately your dependence on the higher beings. And so if one doesn't perform that kind of offering, and one doesn't experience and demonstrate that kind of gratitude, then what happens is there's famine and drought. There's then the earth begins to say, hey, here's a little punishment for you to wake up, and that's what's meant to be happening through this pandemic. We're meant to be waking up, but we don't necessarily have leaders that are in touch with this kind of thing. But all of this talk, it really reminds me of like Native American wisdom.
Native American wisdom. What do you got for me? You got some?
Well, sure, I got some Native American wisdom for you. I was just getting into it this morning, but that idea that where the origin of Native American wisdom, and if the Vedic culture and these teachings were, if you go to the Vedic teachings, it says these teachings were spread all around, the earth and the universe. So, what is the origins of Native American wisdom? we can't say how far it goes back and how these cultures are all connected and how all the wisdom cultures of the world are connected. But we can derive a lot of the very same wisdom that we're reading about in Bhagavatam. We can hear it coming through, Native American wisdom. Now here we're talking about the earth, and there's so much in that Native American wisdom, which I will admit I'm not so steeped in. But when I hear it, I can recognize the connections, right? So I have a couple quotes pulled up. This one is so nice, and so relevant, and also in many ways very relevant to where we are right now. But it speaks about the earth. It's when I read this verse, and this is coming from Black Elk, okay?
It was good.
Who was a Oglala Sioux. I hope I pronounced that right. But he speaks about peace, but peace on three different levels. Peace within oneself, peace between individuals, and peace between nations or groups of individuals. And when I read this, I feel like I'm reading Bhagavatam, because he's going to speak about the Paramatma. He's going to speak about how the Paramatma dwells within all of us. He's going to speak about how the Paramatma is kind of tying everything together. It's Bhagavad Gita, it's Bhagavatam, But you ready for this, Raghu? Black Elk?
Hit me.
The first piece, which is the most important, is that which comes within the souls of people when they realize their relationship, their oneness with the universe and all its powers. And when they realize that at the center of the universe dwells Wakantanka, the Great Spirit. Okay, so to me, when I hear that, it's just like, we have a oneness because we're all Satchidananda. We're all the energy of God or that great universal spirit, right? And that spirit is everywhere. And we have a oneness with that. And that's where all the powers in the universe come from, whether it be from the Paramatma or the Devas, who are all empowered by the Paramatma. So the first piece, which is most important, is that which comes within the souls of people when they realize their relationship, their oneness with the universe and all its powers. And when they realize that at the center of the universe dwells the Great Spirit, and that this center is really everywhere. I'm the light of the sun, right? I'm the light of the moon. I'm the taste and water. That Krishna is within every soul. He's within every atom, right? As Paramatma. So, and that this center is really everywhere. It is within each of us. That's the Paramatma. This is the real peace. And the others are but reflections of this. So he's saying we need to realize Paramatma within ourselves. We need to realize Paramatma within every living being. We need to realize Paramatma within every atom of the universe. And when we realize that, we'll have peace. And when you have that peace, then the other pieces that he's going to speak about now, the other types of peace, that they're reflections of this. In other words, he's saying, if we don't have spiritual depth, we won't achieve peace between individuals or peace between nations. It's a very profound statement, in my opinion, So he says,
Go.
He says the second piece is that which is made between two individuals. The third is that which is made between two nations. But above all, you should understand that there can never be peace between nations until there is known that true peace, which, as I have often said, is within the souls of men, within the souls of people, right? To me, this is so profound. It's saying that we all need, that we won't have peace and we won't have happiness in this world until we have some depth of spiritual realization. If I don't have a depth of my own spiritual realization, then I think my happiness is derived from something outside, not from the great spirit that resides within. And now, and if you don't have that realization and I don't have that realization, then when we begin to fight over the limited resources that we have, right? Mm. So the peace between the individuals won't come. The peace between nations won't come until there's a spiritual depth. And that spiritual depth, it means seeing that higher power, or the universal powers, the devas, or the central power, Paramatma or Krishna. When we realize these deeply, then we'll have peace within. And when we have peace within, we'll be capable of having peace between individuals and peace between nations. And I don't want to get into a big political thing, but I think this is a topic that is really important in terms of social justice, because I'm of the opinion, I'm in agreement, in essence, I believe, with a lot of the talk that goes around the idea of spiritual bypassing that's become a very popular term recently. But at the same time, you cannot, in other words, our spiritual depth should manifest in justice in the world, just, peace between individuals, peace between nations or communities. It should be demonstrated in a real way, in a practical way. But at the same time, the idea that, all our talk on that and all our efforts on that will remain superficial if it's not coming from a place of spiritual depth. So let us cultivate that spiritual depth and not deny its importance. So anyway, I just thought that was a really profound
and timely.
And timely. And then going further and talking about this is a quote from Sitting Bull.
All right, you got more.
I got one from Sitting Bull, and it has to do with the earth and the relationship with the earth, and how when one's out of touch with that, how greed manifests. Right? Again, sacrifice to the devas from the Vedic tradition. It has all to do with humility and gratitude. And a recognition that my needs are being provided, and so I do the ritual to deepen that understanding. And we see the Native Americans, they had their rituals in terms of the earth, in terms of the river, in terms of the mountain, in terms of the sun, etc., the rain. So that's there in the Vedic tradition. And again, the idea is it's not just some primitive, colonists, coming to America saw the Native Americans as primitive due to chauvinism, and weren't always capable of understanding the depth of realization that's there. So when we hear about Vedic sacrifice, let's try to understand it in that way too, that there's a depth of wisdom that's behind the ritual, behind the sacrifice, that's meant to cultivate a deeper realization of humility and gratitude, etc., and that directly counteracts our lower nature, like greed, for instance. And so this has to do with greed. So this is Sitting Bull. He says, the love of possessions is a disease with them, the Americans. Right? The love of possessions is a disease with them. They take tithes from the poor and weak to support the rich who rule. They claim this mother of ours, right? Same in Native American, same there in the Vedic tradition, right? That the earth is seen as a mother. That one has to, if you're not seeing the earth as a mother, you're out of touch, right? They claim this mother of ours, the earth, for their own, and fence their neighbors away. If America had been twice the size it is, there still would not have been enough. Right? Which, which reminds me, of, what that reminds me of? If the earth had been twice the size, what Bhagavatam verse? Does that remind you of anything?
No. Can I put Jeff Eisenberg on the hot seat?
Sure.
What is it?
Well, there's a pastime that's going to come later in Bhagavatam.
These guys were up to 11 o'clock just singing out in the yogi house. What
are they singing?
Just chanting on a guitar and you know, Josh Kane's master percussionist. These guys were just, it was nice going to bed, just hear them. "Ah." My wife is like, who is that? My wife was out. She came home like, oh, those guys they're singing. They're going to keep going.
So is that, are you providing that as an excuse, a hot seat excuse, or why are you telling me this at this moment?
I can't remember.
Okay.
Disjointed.
All right. Okay. So later in the Bhagavatam, we're going to hear about one of the avatars of Lord Vishnu, Vamandeva, right? Vamandeva appears.
Okay. Yeah, I know where you're going.
Oh, now you know where I'm going, right?
Bali Maharaj.
Yeah, Vamandeva, he's trying to, the Devas and the Asuras, the demigods and the demons, you know, are
Good
in
versus
conflict.
evil.
Good versus evil. They have a conflict, and Bali is like, he's born in the family of the demons, but actually he's really devotional, right? And but he's kind of like the head of the demon society, and he's kind of in control. And Lord Vamandeva, on behalf of the Devas, it's Lord Vishnu appearing as a dwarf. Why dwarf? I don't know.
Can't make it up.
But he's a little dwarf, but he's a beautiful dwarf, brahmachari,
Beautiful dwarf.
right? He's a monk dwarf. And he walks into the arena of Bali, who's like this universal powerhouse, you know.
Who's just usurped the kingdom of Indra.
That's right. He's usurped the Devas. They're you know, he's taken over now, right? He's taken the power. And so Krishna comes as this dwarf. Now, okay, here's this hot seat question, Raghu. What was the name of the guru of Bali? Let's go. He knows it. He knows. You got it. Yes. Sukracharya,
Come
right?
on.
So Sukracharya, he's like this incredible wealth of like Vedic knowledge and science, but it's not like all applied in the right way. So he's telling Bali, he's saying, this little dwarf that's coming up, because generally the king will give alms to the brahmachari, to the monk. And so, you know, Vamadeva's walking in there like a monk, and it's like, okay, well, what's he going to ask for? And Shukracharya tells Bali, this is Vishnu. This is actually the god of your enemies. So he's saying in terms of friends and enemies and all of that. And he's saying, don't give him anything, right? But Bali is saying, I live according to the laws of dharma. If he asks for me, I give. And that's just what I do. So and this incident is an important one. It has another importance because it's an illustration of how if the guru goes off, right? If the guru goes off, the disciples should reject the guru. All right. And so Bali says, what would you like? You know, what can I offer you? And Lord Vishnu, in the form of Vamandeva, this monk dwarf, he says, I want 3 paces of land. And the whole thing is kind of poetic too, because he's like a dwarf, you know. So it's
Right.
like
3 paces of land for me is pretty small, but for dwarf it's even smaller. It's like, come on, the guy. It's like you're also asking Bali. What does Bali own? He owns the entire universe. He doesn't just own a house or a property or a country or a nation or the planet. He owns the universe. He says, come on, you're asking me for 3 steps of land. And his reply. So
this is what Bali says. He says, "Oh, son of a Brahmana, your instructions are as good as those of learned and elderly persons, even though you're just a little boy. Nonetheless, you are a boy, and your intelligence is insufficient. Thus, you are not very prudent in regard to your self-interests. You're only asking for 3 paces of land. I am able to give you an entire island." And I believe here island is like, it's a more universal island, right? It means like a whole like galaxy kind of thing.
Yeah, galaxy.
Right? I'm able to give you an entire island because I am the proprietor of the 3 divisions of the universe, the lower, middle, and upper planetary systems. You have come to take something from me and have pleased me by your sweet words. but you're asking only 3 paces of land. Therefore, you are not very intelligent. O small boy, one who approaches me to beg something should not have to ask for anything more anywhere. Therefore, if you wish, you may ask from me as much land as will suffice to maintain you according to your needs. Now comes the verse. All right. It's just, I love Bhagavatam. It's just framing this verse, that you were meant to carry with us, like, through our life. And the same kind of thing Sitting Bull is like catching on to over here, right? It's like, these people are out of touch. Don't they get it? So this is Bali Maharaj's verse. He says, "Oh, my dear king, even the entirety of whatever there may be within the 3 planetary systems that you rule, even the entirety of whatever there may be within the 3 worlds to satisfy one's senses cannot satisfy a person whose senses are uncontrolled." Boom. Right? What a verse. All that there is that can satisfy your senses is not enough to satisfy one whose senses are uncontrolled. So Sitting Bull is saying, even if America had been twice the size, it wouldn't have been enough, because their senses are out of control. They're out of touch with wisdom. They're out of touch with the earth. They're out of touch with the sun. They're out of touch with the moon. They're out of touch with the river. They're out of touch with the mountain. They don't get it, right? So this verse, in other words, we think I'll get what satisfies my senses and I'll be happy, but it doesn't work that way. We want more, and we'll always be in that. And that's called Rajaguna. That's called the mode of passion, right? I don't have what I need. I still want more. Where Sattva-guna is like, I'm satisfied with what's been provided for me. And from that place, one can see things more clearly. One has a lucid mind, and that's the mind of the yogi. From it's situated in Sattva-guna. It means I can live simply and be satisfied. I don't need to keep feeding my senses with more and more and more. Sitting Bull. Huh?
Trying to think about the origins of greed in my own life, or in the lives of how we grew up. It's like, what was it, like collecting baseball cards? It's like collecting things. It's like we don't want one. We want to collect many of even the same thing. Many pairs of shoes, many automobiles, many property, and there's a feeling because that will give me some type of security. We're like missing out on some primordial security or something that we have to fend for ourselves. We store.
Squirrel
away. And then once you squirrel away, there's fear.
Right?
Fear I might lose. Someone will take it from me by force. So the storing and the anxiety, they go hand in hand together. So when you're living in Native America world where there's no taxes and no debt, imagine that. There's no taxes, there's no debt, and women did all the work.
That's the work.
Women did all the work. Now men did all the work too. But I just read this. I can't remember who said it, but they said, "No taxes, no debt. Women did all the work." Was another Native American quote.
And I'm not so again, I'm not so learned in Native American history, Native American, but I can see, that there's a wisdom tradition within it. And when you hear that wisdom tradition, and again, you see that same wisdom in the Bible. You'll see that same wisdom, in Buddhism. You'll see that's, it's there throughout these wisdom traditions, and it's like our society is in desperate need for this. We don't need sectarianism. We don't need religion in that sense.
And I feel, do we have to bring it back to just such simple living to get rid of the stronghold of just of greed and lust and these passions? Do we have to bring it back to? Does it have to take the end of the reversal of the Industrial Revolution where we become forest dwellers again?
You're asking me?
Yes.
My opinion?
Yes, or because it's like everything else is is leading to this
Yeah, it's
create, collect, destroy. It's like this endless cycle.
well, I think if we step back and we try to look at it from a distance, we see that everything that we create to try to make life more convenient, it comes with costs, right? It gives us cancer. It does that. There's always something. There's always some problem with it, right? We got these smartphones now, but actually they're giving us cancer, and they're creating all kinds of, we're mining the earth for all these precious things. There's always cruelty involved.
Yeah.
And there's always some form of backlash. And so it seems that there's a message, right? That nature sends a message that you have to live simply.
I thought the coronavirus and the lockdown was supposed to send us that message.
It's supposed to.
Pick up that. Did anybody download that memo? Or were we just like, back to work?
Yeah. Well, you get people saying, let's not go back to normal, right? Because normal is what's caused this.
Yeah.
And so I think a thoughtful person can see that the direction, and it's accelerated, in the past century, like to such a degree. But we see that there's costs with it always, and those costs get more and more extreme. And so then wise people say, you know what, we need to go back. Now, whether that's like 100% or whether it's like, let's live with such wisdom that we make the priorities clear. And so we're not going to let it get out of control. We're not going to be this automobile civilization, that is all about our cars, and we destroy the earth because of it. Maybe a car could still exist, but it would be a very, in a very limited way or something like that. Or maybe it all crashes, and that is the only way that we learn. And when you see the level of our leadership, I get the impression that that's the option.
Towards crash.
Yeah, but because it's like children, we can learn a lot from. Sometimes children show us, wisdom, and sometimes they show us how ridiculous we can be. The selfishness sometimes it's displayed by children, or the fighting over something that there's no need to fight over, that kind of thing. Now, in his commentaries, Prabhupada's always saying that this bhakti, this Bhagavatam, it can save humanity in its darkest hour. It has the wisdom to do that, that we can turn it around. And maybe that does involve, some level of collapse, but before people are really ready to understand it. But he was always saying we need to develop these farm, that's why like a project like the Govardhan Eco Village is so important, in my opinion. Because we need to demonstrate to people how we can live in a way, and get it through people's heads that it's not only can you live that way, and not only can you live with a certain level of comfort, but it's a beautiful life. It's a life that grants you deeper happiness, right? It's not a life that's like, oh my God, that's a life of suffering. No, that's a beautiful, happy life. And we have to somehow turn back to that. Somehow we got to get that going upstate someday, right, Raghunath? Like on a level.
That's the life plan.
Yeah.
The quality of existence is just better. Take all the philosophy and rituals and etc. and the robes, take that all out of the picture. It's just a better lifestyle. It's a better way. It's another shelter
Here
song.
we go again. Here we go again. That's another song too. Yes, Raghu. It's okay. But so in any case, this is how you read this passage from Bhagavatam, right? Try to understand it in this kind of context. That when Dharma, and I don't think we should probably say this for tomorrow, but like, what are the three legs of Dharma that have been knocked out, and what is the one leg of Dharma that the bull is standing on? But when we hear these kind of stories, and then, the king's going to come along and he's going to see the personification of the age of Kali, and he's ready to kill it. And then the age of Kali is going to surrender out of fear. And then he's going to grant the age of Kali certain places where he can reside, so that he's not too much problematic, right?
Mm.
But where Kali resides becomes very important.
Don't give it away. Don't give it away.
Yeah, well, let's hold on to
Sure.
until tomorrow for this. But then where Kali resides will become very important. But it's metaphorical. But it's so helpful to understand. And this plays a role in spiritual practice because, and we'll get into all this tomorrow. We'll leave it kind of like a cliffhanger. But like, for instance, the practice of bhakti is handed down through the process of initiation, right? That one is initiated, that there's into a lineage. And when that's done, there's a different step. There are different steps in that process and in that ritual that involve recognition of where Kali resides and the vow to avoid it. Otherwise, the other part of the initiation, or one of the other parts of the initiation, the giving of the mantra, it won't be effective, right? And when you see it in this way, in other words, I need to live a certain way that's free of those negative influences that people get controlled by. Mm. And if I don't, then that mantra will have not so much effect in transforming my consciousness. So then the vows are taken, right? I'll avoid this, I'll avoid that, I'll avoid this, and I'll avoid that. And then I'll embrace that mantra, as well as like a change in name, right? Which it has to do with letting go of the false designations. And so we'll get into that tomorrow. But when you see spirituality in this framework, you can understand like the rules and the regulations that are handed down in religions, that we may lose touch with their purpose, but if we can understand them clearly, then we can understand their spiritual purpose, their transformative power. And that it leads to this place where you have a person that's in touch with the earth, that's let go of greed, right? That sees God within themselves and within every living being and within nature, that can move through this world peacefully, with tolerance, with wisdom and insight, and ultimately with love, and can achieve that peace between within oneself, between individuals, and between nations. And without that depth and without that self-control, which we say, oh, these are rules imposed upon us by religion to control it. No, it's like, if you want freedom from greed, freedom from anger, freedom from attachment, if you want peace, then one needs that level of self-control. Otherwise we get controlled. And so real spiritual life involves that self-control combined with powerful spiritual sources, powerful sources of spiritual energy, like mantra, like Bhagavatam, like the holy places, like the deities, the rituals involved in deity worship, like the association of great souls, that these are all really very potent. They carry powerful spiritual energy, but we need that self-control as well. We need to become disciplined. We need to master the mind and master the senses. And when we do that, we can really absorb ourselves and connect with these powerful sources of spiritual energy.
That was the spot.
All right. You got it. It's a little early today, but I guess you just
it is a little early. It's too late.
Well, anyway, too late now.
But I thought you were like looking at me like, come on, hit that button. I've been waiting ever since he chastised me that a week ago for hitting the wrong button at the wrong time.
I was ready for you to break into a shelter song, but okay, this is good too.
Thanks for joining us, everybody. Another show in the archives. Exciting. Questions and Answers Day. You get to sleep in. No, wait. It's only Thursday. Tomorrow at 5. See you tomorrow at 5. Thanks, everybody, joining us on Apple Podcast. Hey, if you listen to even if you don't listen to Apple Podcasts, go to Apple Podcasts. It's right there on your iPhone. Give us a 5-star ranking. It really helps keeping us in the podcast world conversation. We'd really appreciate that. Write us a review. Also, if you're out there listening to us and we don't know about you, write us. Let us know how you heard about the show, if it's affecting you. We'd love it. Oh, today's Ekadashi.
Today's Ekadashi.
It's
in New York.
Ekadashi today. 11th day of the moon. That threw me off. Now where are we going? Okay. Write us at Wisdom of the Sages. Let us know where you are. Wisdom of the Sages 108@gmail.com. Very, 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 very happy to be in touch with people that we don't know are out there. And if you like what we're doing, support us through Patreon. Patreon.com/Wisdom of the Sages. Wisdom of the Sages is a community-supported podcast. So show your support. Show your support. Show your support.
It's gorgeous.
By going there and give a monthly donation if you feel like you're getting something out of this. By giving back, it really helps keep this boat floating. And we try to really make it powerful by our whole online community, which is growing a little bit out of control right now. Like today we had a workshop with Kumari, right?
No. Ananda Devi.
It's all on Patreon. You got to look.
Ananda Devi teaching yoga.
Today we have who's teaching, Mara?
Ananda Devi.
Who's teaching?
Ananda Devi.
Oh, Ananda Devi. Ananda Devi's teaching. We got to get some Euros to teach. We got a lot of Europeans here. Maybe perhaps some Canadians or some of the others. It's lip sync time.